All right, welcome. These are the 5 steps to take if you don't match. I am Tony Guerra, PharmD of the Pharmacy Residency podcast, and I want to talk a little bit first about kind of the emotional impact of this, and then how little time you have to take that next step. And I'll tell you why, and it has a lot to do with the numbers. But let's first take a look at that day and how you might feel if you don't match. Okay. So the first thing is you're going to feel like you let your team down. And I mean not just your college, but your friends, your family, everyone that has kind of supported you. Maybe you have an immediate family, maybe you're married, have kids, all of these things. And you're going to have this feeling that you made some mistakes and you didn't do well enough. You also are going to feel that you let yourself down. You worked hard, but in hindsight, now you might be able to see some of the opportunities that you had that you didn't take, and under the duress of all the work that you had to do, it was really, really hard for you to make the right moves, and you weren't able to do it. So the feeling is going to be one of just your heart is going to be pulled out of your chest. The problem is if you're going to apply for phase 2, you have literally hours till the list comes out, and then just a few days until you have to get your application in to the next step. Because when you go into phase 2, the issue is that you have 2,500 other people that just found out that they didn't match, in addition to the 1,500 people that already knew that they wouldn't match because they have no interview invitation. So now there are approximately 4,000 people that are going to try to either move into phase 2 or move into the job market. Now, it's pretty clear. I work out and do CrossFit, and 2 of the people that I actually work out with sometimes are pharmacy supervisors, and they've already seen the uptick in applications of students who want to, quotation fingers, get back to the community, which is really saying, okay, the residency thing didn't work out, gave it a shot, I'm not going to try for phase 2. But many people will try for phase 2, and you have about 96 hours. Okay, from that kind of just before the weekend to the next week, and you have to get your application in as soon as it opens, because there is such a flood of applications that even if they don't shut their site down, they will stop looking at applications because they're already going to have enough. So everything, and we'll talk about this as we move along, is accelerated in phase 2. It's more competitive, it's accelerated, and it's just tougher. So think about it as moving from maybe a sport that was high school to high school, where now you're going to states or even nationals or something like that. Okay? So you have to revise your letters of intent to clearly articulate why this site and you match. You have to change around your CVs if especially you're changing from acute care to ambulatory care to community to ambulatory care, or something like that. The order of your APPEs is the biggest thing, that you need to have the most relevant sites that you went to at the top. So let's say, for example, that you had it in chronological order and you were applying to ambulatory care sites, but you put your acute care sites at the top, which may or may not make a lot of sense. Or your electives at the top just because they were first. That's not what you want to do. The next thing is the recommendations, and I've talked about this before. Not only do you have to let your recommenders know you're going to phase 2, you also need to figure out if one of those recommendations, or maybe more than one, was toxic. Now, it is absolutely the most painful thing to think that someone that you trusted did not give you a positive recommendation. But the question you have to ask yourself is, did you ask them if they would give you a positive recommendation? And what is absolutely brutal, and this is kind of one of those, I don't necessarily want to call it a secret, but it's certainly something few talk about. But many times it is a faculty member at your own college that writes an honest recommendation. So they're doing their job to write an honest recommendation. But the expectation is that if they are not able to write a positive recommendation after you spend $250,000 on this education, it would have been nice for them to tell you, I will write it, but I'm just letting you know that it would be difficult for me to write a recommendation as positive as it might need to be for you to be successful in this residency search. And I have done that and said, although you've done well, I don't think that the recommendation I will give will support you as well as maybe someone who came after me after you kind of knew a little bit better of what was expected and those types of things. So you have this very small window to get everything done. Okay, so you need a team, and I will be there from the time that everybody hears they didn't get it residency to the time where the application needs to be turned in. I'll be turning around letters of intent within 48 hours, usually sooner, and it's just going to be a matter of making sure that you know what your top site is. Because what I do is I take that top site, we make a letter of recommendation for that top site, or a letter of intent for that top site, and then I give you a template from that one so that you can build your other ones. And I can help you with the other ones if you want, but this is the fee for the course is for this one thing. Then if you want other ones, that's fine, but we can talk about that later. But right now, we just have to focus on the other part of it, which is, well, what do you mean I need a team? Who are they? Whether it's your pharmacy fraternity, your college family, or your friends, this may be the hardest thing for you to do, but you must let everyone know you did not match. If you do this, and you do this quickly, it will be like pulling the Band-Aid off really quick. Or you know the pool's going to be cold until you get underneath the water and just dive in. You must let everyone know you did not match. Because what's going to happen is all of the Facebook feeds, all of the social media feeds are going to be filled with people putting pictures up of the notice that they got, that they matched, and where they matched. Okay. Rare, and when I say rare, I mean like 1 in 100, 1 in 50, will put up that they did not match. I need your help. People cannot help you if they don't know. What you're first thinking is, I have failed and all of this, but what's going to happen when you tell a group whose primary responsibility is to help people that you need help? The first thing they're going to do is reach out to you and try to help you. And this wasn't just, we'll talk about what the things are that people can do, but it can go from just, okay, a word of encouragement to a recommendation to, oh my gosh, I can't believe you didn't match. Let's talk a little bit about what happened, to find out that maybe you applied to the top 4 sites and you only applied to 4 sites because that's what the cost paid for, or the initial application fee paid for. And they can put a good word in for you. Okay? But they cannot help if they don't know. Okay, so let's talk about the 5 steps for phase 2 and how you should approach it. 1, I've written a book. I need you to listen to or read the phase 2 book. It will take an hour. And it's good that you have a first step. Okay. Your first step, don't start looking at the menu of sites that are open. Don't start doing anything that would take you down the negative road of what did I do wrong. Right now, just listen to my advice for an hour of what you need to do and what phase 2 is all about. I assure you that if you spend and invest that 1 hour in listening to the book, it will make it a lot easier for you to get to where you want to go a lot faster. Then and only then, after you have that perspective, identify the sites in phase 2 that you are interested in. And for example, you might live in a state and there might only be 4 or 5 in that state. In general, there are around 200 to 250 sites, actually openings. There are 200 to 250 openings in phase 2. So there were about 3,500 to 4,000 in phase 1. Of those, there's about 200 to 250 left. The issue is that there were 8,000 applicants for 4,000 sites, and now there are 4,000 applicants, potential applicants, it's not that many, for 250 sites. So the competition is much higher. Number 3, you must contact them about your interest. This is not an application. This is starting the conversation. Hey, I saw that you didn't have a match in phase 2. I am also available. I just wanted to let you know that I will be submitting an application to you. Is there anything specific that I should know about your process and what you're doing? Okay. And from these, you might get a conversation. This is not a formal interview that you're going to get. Like, okay, well, great. I'm glad you've contacted us. We've set up the interview for you for that day. But what you will maybe do is get some informal interviews or things like that. 4, you have to revise your letters of intent, your CVs, and your recommendations. So the letters of intent must go to these sites, obviously. You can send them to tonythepharmacist@gmail.com to have me look at it, and I can tell you in about 5 seconds, 10 seconds, what the primary issues are and if I can help you. Because if you have a letter of intent that looks perfectly good, then it's something with your CV or your recommendations. But if I look at it and I see the UCSF template or the ACC template, I'm not going to judge you. I'm just going to tell you, look, this is a generic letter of intent. We have a couple of hours to make this into a letter of intent that shows how you uniquely match better to that site better than anyone else. That's your goal. The CVs need to, especially if you are changing from ambulatory care to community to ambulatory care, acute care to AM care, whatever it is, needs some revision, but maybe not as much. And then the recommenders, you need to let them know right away. Hey, I'm going to need recommendations for phase 2. I want to go for it. Will you be willing to write a positive letter of recommendation for me? So important to put the word positive in, because if they cannot, this gives them an opening that, yes, I could write a letter of recommendation, but I don't feel that it would be positive at the level that you would need. And what that also does is tells you why maybe you didn't match in phase 1. And then you must apply when the application's open. At that hour. Crash the servers. That's when you have to do it. Because it is going to be, I don't want to say it's a madhouse, but there are literally hundreds of applications going to these sites that maybe before they didn't get a lot of applications, but they're going to get them now because the numbers are just so overwhelming. Again, it was 8,000 for 4,000. Now it's 4,000 for 200. Okay, so just an order of magnitude different. So let's take a walk through these steps. Okay, so first we're going to get perspective and listen to a book about a student who matched in phase 2. It's called Crushing the Phase 2 Pharmacy Residency Match, Proven Tactics to Earn a Clinical Pharmacist Training Position. Okay. Before you can even start this process, you first need to believe, and I know that's cliche, you can match in phase 2. if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can already get the ebook for free. It's part of your Kindle Unlimited. I have made it that way so that you can have access to it. It's like $10 if you get the ebook without Kindle Unlimited. Audiobook, if you've never been on audible.com before, you can get on and get this audiobook for free. Or you can email me at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. I have 20 free codes left. I've given a couple of them away already to people that have asked me for them that know that they didn't unfortunately get an interview opportunity. But I do have a couple of free codes left. I don't think it's expensive, though. I think it's like $5 or something like that. But it is under $10 to get the book. But what I need you to do is not only understand how phase 2 works, but I need you to hear a story about someone who did it. And this is the key. They matched in an academic medical center, one of the toughest residencies to get. Okay. All right, so let's look a little bit at the just kind of parts of the book quickly, and then we'll kind of move on to part 2. So there's an introduction kind of explaining the numbers. It is a year ago because it takes so long to write a book like this that although the information is 2019, 2020, the information is still relevant. You will learn about match day and what happens on that day, about the 4-day weekend, 96 hours about, when phase 2 opens for applications, how you use match statistics to inform your application. So if you're coming from a school that matches well normally, then phase 2 sites are going to be very excited about your application. So if you're, for example, at Kentucky or UNC or Drake or Iowa or Minnesota or UCSF, whatever it is, and someone sees your application, like, oh, cool. All right. So this is a good one. And you say, well, how are they just going to look at my school and that's all they're going to look at? Well, imagine if you got 200 applications in a single day. You have 4 residents and yourself. You thought the process was over. And now you and those 4 residents need to somehow evaluate 200 applications. What's the very quickest way to do it? Look at the top schools. Okay? Dr. Key Gales, who worked for me for a couple of years to help me in teaching, matched in phase 2, not only in PGY1, it's not in the story, but he also matched in phase 2 in PGY2. But it's a story about someone who was well qualified, who did something that is very difficult to pull off. He applied to acute care sites, being very honest about his goal to be in ambulatory care. But I think he actually ended up wanting acute care after he began his residency. But he matched to a highly sought after academic medical center, which is hard enough to do in phase 1, which is nearly impossible to do in phase 2. And I don't think that if he didn't come from Drake, if he was one of the top schools in that year, I don't think that he would have had a chance. But he was a Midwesterner coming to a Midwest site, and I'll talk more about location. And then there's a chapter about another book that I've written, the Unicorn Jobs book for pharmacists. And the misconception is that it's unicorn jobs like there's only one of those jobs, like a unicorn there's only one of them. And what it really is saying is that it's a job that you create because it's exactly a perfect fit for what you want. But again, I made it intentionally just an hour so that you can get through it on the drive home, whatever it is you need to do. Number 2, identify sites. The first thing you want to do is get your head around this is a people game, not a qualifications game. When you have 200 people applying for the same thing, that means that they need a way to sort it out. And I've talked to RPD after RPD, and they all say the same thing. It doesn't matter what we do with the rubric. Everybody's a couple points from each other. We need to know people, and we need some kind of connection. So the very first place you want to go is to where you know someone, or where someone you know knows someone. And this is where it becomes so important that you are in an organization, especially if you are in a leadership position. And from that leadership position, you can reach out to other people. If you did an appy at the site, you've already done a 5-week interview. And you can let them know, hey, I didn't match. Are you open to an interview and all these types of things? And you can communicate with them and get that started. But also you can speak to your faculty. Say, hey, I didn't match. And not just because it looks better for the school if extra students match, but because they genuinely have been building you up and developing you, and they want you to succeed. I would definitely prioritize sites in your own state, then sites in your own region, and then sites nationwide in that order. It is really hard in phase 2, in the speed that all of this happens, for someone in the Southeast to articulate their value to someone in the Pacific Northwest, or someone in the Southwest to articulate their value to someone in New England. You have to build that relationship through maybe appies, through maybe connections, whatever it is. There is no time. But you might be in a state that has only 1 or 2, and so you'll go to your region. And then from that region, you'll go nationwide. But again, we are going to start talking about contacting sites, because it really is going to start happening the day that notice goes out at noon, that, okay, here's the list. Here's what's open. Okay. All right. So sites, number 1, let's talk about number 3, which is contact sites before application day. 1, sites often schedule informal meetings before the application day, but they cannot accept your application. That has to go through forecast still. But the conversation can start. And trust me, they're also saying, oh man, phase 2, it's really tough. But don't think that good places aren't in phase 2. Maryland was in phase 2, which gets easily 200 applications per position. Cleveland Clinic was in phase 2 last year. There are many, many very good programs in phase 2. And the thing that they do know about phase 2 is that they don't need to rank everybody that they looked at, because they know that there's going to be plenty of good applicants in phase 2. Yeah, it's going to be a pain, but they know that the quality of their residents will remain very high. Number 2, an email of interest that allows you to see which sites are receptive to you. They really want to hear from you. And this may sound strange. You're going to be thinking, well, I don't want to bother them if they're going to have all this volume. Well, what needs to happen is that you need to contact them, make the application, and then build a relationship. And you have to do this very quickly. And so I have heard of students talking to 30 or 40 sites and actually hearing back from maybe half that, 15, 20, and then making application to those where they got a positive response. And what that does is it halves your work. Instead of hoping that these sites are going to be receptive to you, you're going to find the sites that are actually receptive to you. Even if it's just I definitely think you should apply to our site. I think we're a good fit. And here is a hack or a trick or whatever you want to call it. You should attach and put your information in the body of the email. I remember when it was the market crash, I was still running a real estate practice, and because there were so many realtors going out of the business, I had plenty of work to still do, and I was hiring, but I was getting all of these applications. And what I would find is that maybe the application was in Pages, which is Mac or Apple's kind of Microsoft Word, and I couldn't open it because I had like a Dell at the time. Now I have a Mac. Or it wasn't a PDF and it just wouldn't open right, or the formatting was weird. Make sure that you put a relevant part of your cover letter or CV in the actual letter, so that instead of that click, they can just kind of scroll down and immediately see, oh wow, they've got a bunch of these rotations that they've done at nearby hospitals. This might be a really good person to interview. So again, attach and put the same information in the body of your email. Okay. All right. So this is the book. I've written it, The Strong Residency Letter of Intent, writing to be interviewed with a cover letter that earns the invite. You must revise your letter of intent. The LOI is not why you are the best. Someone will always have more qualifications, and this is the number one reason that someone will not get an interview. They are trying to win a marathon against a marathoner, and they are a 5K runner, or they don't work out much at all. There is always going to be someone more qualified. What you must do is match them best and show how you are the best fit. That marathoner may not be a very good fit with a group that likes to play hockey. And I'm just making up some sports analogies now. Show, don't tell how you match. What you say is, okay, so let's say there's a children's hospital that has an opening available. And you say, this is a story about my experience in the PICU, and I want to talk about the PGY2 rotations that you have that are really something that I would love to build on the experience that I had in the PICU. That is showing why you are qualified. What is telling you are qualified is, I want to do pediatrics. Okay? So the big thing with this phase 2 is making sure that you are able to show them quickly in a scannable document. What that means is that the most important thing is in the first couple sentences, that you are writing a unique letter to them. You cannot pull off a generic LOI in phase 2. It's just not going to work. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the illusion of explanatory depth. So the issue with the letter of intent is, and when you wrote it the first time, you may have just taken a template, written a letter, made sure the grammar is right, and sent it in. It's just a letter about you. It should be really easy. This is the illusion of explanatory depth. So why is it so hard to write a good letter of intent? And this is an excerpt from the Strong Residency Letter of Intent, writing to be interviewed with a cover letter that earns the invite. Here's a nerdy answer. Can you tell me how a microwave works? You'd probably say, sure. But then when I asked you to give me a detailed explanation with drawings, you would really struggle. This is the illusion of explanatory depth, which basically says most people think they understand something better than they do until they have to explain it to someone else in detail. And I should have put after that, or do it themselves. We need you to write a cover letter that tells us about your past, about how your experiences match our offerings. Oh, no problem. And we need you to do it in a single page. And please use 11 to 12 point font with 1-inch margins and proper business formatting, making sure to double space between the paragraphs. Okay, got a little harder, right? So when you try to write a letter of intent, you are the victim of this illusion. You've written emails, papers, maybe a resume or CV, but properly crafting a letter of intent that earns you an interview takes a specific skill set that you likely haven't honed. It's not that you couldn't do it if you were given enough time, but in 96 hours, you have to write maybe 10 letters. That's why people come to me, because what I do is I help them write that first template, the perfect, unique template to them, to that first site. Then I help them with the template for the second through 10th letter. So the people I'm working with are banging out those letters, no problem, getting them done, and moving on to the CV and recommendations, fine-tuning their emails to those people that they want to talk to. While other people are like, well, what did I do wrong in this letter and all that? I've read hundreds and hundreds of letters. It takes me seconds to figure out what was wrong. And it takes me a little while longer to make it right. But I assure you that I can. And if you've not worked with me before, you just go to residency.teachable.com/P/extreme LOI, sign up for the course, email me your letter and first choice residency site. We will be off and running. Okay, TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com. All right, so that's the letter of intent. Your CV. I mentioned this before. Part of number 4 is to revise your CV in addition to your letter of intent. You must prioritize the rotations they offer and the appies you match to. Okay. You don't have to list them chronologically, which often makes no sense. And if you're listening to this on audio and can't see the image here, it's the image of someone who doesn't seem like they didn't match. They're relaxing on their backpack on a beach, just typing with the waves in the background. Okay. What you want to do as you're doing this CV, as you're writing the letter of intent, is acting as if you are going to match. That if you don't match, no problem. It's a very tough feeling to pull off, but what you want to do is not write them in this frenzy. And what I hear over and over again from the people I work with is, I feel so much more confident now. My anxiety is so much less now. At least I know that I did the very best I could in this area. Okay. There are no guarantees or anything like that. But what I can do is change the feeling that you have from one of scattered, chaotic confusion and lack of confidence, for a better term, to a confident, well-articulated argument that you match to a site. Next, if you can't see the image, it's a soccer coach talking to a bunch of kids and showing the game plan. Okay. You want to gather your recommenders, and game plan with them. They will fight for you. If they really liked you and they want you to succeed, they will fight for you. They will make the calls for you. You never know if in the background someone called someone to say, hey, I think you should really take a look at this person. I know that they're going to apply. Okay, what was the person's name? How do you spell that last name? Okay, great. And you say, no, that really doesn't happen. I assure you, it happens all the time. Okay. Pharmacy is a small world. We know a lot of people. When you have a preceptor, and especially if they're in a specific field, they have an even smaller group. But they can also let you know about some opportunities that you may not have heard of or that are coming up. But again, the network, the organization that you have put your time into, that's where you really want to go, and make sure that the recommenders know what they need to do. Part 5, you must apply on the first day. Even if the sites don't formally close, they will stop taking applications. They will stop answering emails. If you've ever been in a community pharmacy where maybe 2 people called out and you don't even have time to answer the phone. Okay, supervisor calls, can't pick up, says, why aren't you answering the phones? We don't have enough people to answer the phones and to help the people that are here. Okay? So even if they don't formally close, they may stop taking applications. You must apply on the first day and early in that first day. Many phase 2 sites have never done it before. Let's use the number 200. If 4,000 matched, okay, that means that only 5% of sites would not have matched in the past year. And I know that this math is not exactly right, the way that I'm doing this. But that means that if every site, if we had 4,000 sites every year, and if every year 200 didn't match, that means that it would take 20 years between times they didn't match. So it is at least a rare event that phase 2 sites have not matched. So when you say, gosh, they seem really disorganized, what you want to do is provide the solution. Let me help you. Let me tell you why I can solve your problem. Let the other applicants go. I am your solution. Obviously, you're not going to write that. But that's what you've got to think is that, oh, wait a minute. They're really struggling too. They've got to scramble to get the interviews in, to get this person hired, because if they don't get hired, it may be cut from the budget. The volume is absolutely overwhelming on their side. Okay. So what I want to do is this last part is talk about a sports analogy, and I don't want to call it Little League because it's soccer, but my daughters are 9 years old and they've been very successful in soccer. And the reason is because of a small shift and a single book that I read. And yes, I've been coaching them, but when we started this, and I mentioned this in a number of my books, I was not good. We lost games, a lot of games. We only won a few. And I said, okay, well, this is my fault. Let's see what are the things that we can do. And I became a student of coaching, a student of soccer, so that I could serve them at the highest level. Now I'm going to help you become a student of the phase 2 process and how to do this in such a way that you can maximize your chances. Okay? So the book on soccer, this is he was a Division I coach for a little while, but his fame actually came from being, I think, an NAIA coach, where he clearly articulated what the things are that a student of the game would need to know. And I'm going to tell you 3 of those things and how they relate to the residency process. Number 1, the holy grail of phase 2 is increased speed of play. Everything is faster. 2, tactics. We'll talk about the 50-50 throw-in ball, but you have to know where you stand based on your college, and if you're applying in-state, out-of-state, and all of those things, to know how many applications and where to apply. 3rd, right place, right time. The kids used to wear wristbands, and I bought them these wristbands where blue would be the strikers, pink would be the midfielders, and then white would be the defenders or backs. Okay. And what we would do is we would set it up in such a way that they would know exactly where they need to go. Okay. And we would make these shifts as we're transitioning people in, and they would know exactly what their role is as they went in because they were getting this wristband. Now in COVID, we couldn't do it, but again, that's kind of the approach that we took. Okay. All right, so let me talk about the Strong Letter of Intent book excerpt as I relate to speed of play, tactics, and being at the right place and right time. In applying for residency, you don't realize your speed of play is not up to par until a professor rejects your recommendation request because she has too many already. When you spend weeks on your CV compared to hours on your letter of intent and recommendation, your tactics are off. The LOI and recommendation letters count much more than your CV and 4 years of school. When you try to talk with the residency director during the mob that is the residency showcase, you're not meeting in the right place and right time. Meaningful conversations happen at the evening, relaxing, state, and college gatherings later in the day. I don't want you shut out like my team was in that game. I want you to be a member of the team to beat. You have to increase your speed of play, study successful tactics, and put yourself in the right place at the right time. 1. Speed of play. Take everything you do and do it faster. In soccer, I remember this game so clearly, and I remember the other coach screaming at the ref, and there's nothing I could do, and the ref couldn't hear him. My daughter was so fast at getting the throw in and throwing it in that she no longer cared if it was our throw in or the other team's. And the referee, it was their very first time refereeing a game, and she would just keep throwing it in, and every time there was a throw in, and the referee wasn't calling it. So here this coach is just screaming for this, and there's nothing I can do. All I would do would be screaming too at someone who can't hear me. But she was just throwing it in because she was so accustomed to picking up the throw in, throwing it, and because everyone on the team knew where it was going to go, They didn't have to bother setting up. They were already running towards the goal. The other thing, which is a little bit tougher, and this is really more when you're kind of getting to 9 and 10-year-olds and maybe 11-year-olds, is the one-touch pass, where the ball comes to you and you don't sit there and wait with it, kind of look around and then make a decision, but rather you've already made the decision as the ball is coming to you, and in one touch you make the pass so that the person can't attack you or tackle you. In residency, you must apply on day 1 of phase 2, and you must communicate beforehand. That is an increased speed of play. You are talking to them beforehand. You are not, okay, I'm going to submit my application, cross the fingers, hope for the best. You are an active person making sure to lean into your network and to talk to those people ahead of time and on the day. 2, tactics. That's actually the daughter that does the throw-in thing. The 50-50 throw-in ball. I didn't know this. I became a student of the game, and I found out that in soccer, throw-ins are a 50-50 ball. That is, whether you are throwing it in towards your team or throwing it in and you missed your team, it doesn't matter. 50% of the time you will lose the ball anyway. So in such a short field, and this 10U team, 9U team plays on a much shorter field than a full, high school size field, which is almost a football field. Because that size is so different, if you throw it at their goal, instead of throwing it back to our goal to maybe one of your players to bring it up the field, you have not only gained 15 feet towards the goal, but you have gained the 15 feet you would have lost. So it makes sense to throw it towards the goal. In residency, you must apply to local versus national first. That's your best chance. Where you have relationships to where you don't. Your pharmacy school versus other historical successes is talking about how some pharmacy schools traditionally have sent many, many students to residency. I've mentioned this before, but the top 10 schools send 500 students to residency. The bottom 10 schools send 50. I'll say that again. The top 10 are 500, the bottom 10 are 50. That is an order of magnitude of 10. If your school is at the bottom, you know that you must increase the number of applications. You must apply locally. You must increase your connections to the people who are making the decisions. If you're in the top, you must lean into the network, take advantage of that, and hopefully you have a local one to apply to. Right place, right time. Okay. Again, you must position yourself for success. In soccer, the shape must change in offense and defense. And it was completely my fault, but we lost the game because of just this tactic. When you are in offense, your defenders should be spread out and should be up closer to the midline, so the second image on the right. If, however, you are defending, you should contract and you should both be really at the top of the goal box. And for about 6 minutes of the game, I had 2 players that thought they were wings and not defenders. And it was up to me to clarify that and clear it and figure it out. And I didn't, and we lost the game by 1. But in that 6 minutes, the other team scored 4 goals as they just attacked right down the middle. Right down the middle. We just opened up that lane for them because we were in the wrong shape, in the wrong position. Local equals less risk for the residency site and for the applicant. If they know you're from around here, then you'll probably stay around here and it'll be a better deal. Okay. So how do we start? How can I help? I have helped almost 200 students this season, just this season. So we're talking that of the entire applicant pool to residency this year, I have helped 3% of that entire group. I will be helping students with letters of intent all weekend from the time you find out where to the time that you need to apply. I will be returning those letters of intent within 24 to 48 hours. There don't need to be that many revisions. People ask, well, how many revisions do I get? You don't need them. I didn't finish my PhD, but I am a PhD level trained English major, undergrad, have done master's work and PhD work in English. I have taught Comp 1 and Comp 2, Comp 2 being the more important one because it talks about the arguments and logos, ethos, and pathos. What you're really doing is making an argument as to why, emotionally, logically, and through evidence, that you should be the one that matches. But you go to residency.teachable.com/P/extreme LOI or residency.teachable.com/courses. It's $95 if you want to work with me. And if you are Phi Delta Chi, please let me know because a portion will be going to Phi Delta Chi National starting now. So that's a new thing, but I just want to let you know that if you are PDC, please let me know. You will send me your letter of intent and your CV, so I will always look to see. So even if you don't tell me, I can, oh, okay, I see you were the, I don't know, WKA, gosh, I'm so used to the worthy prelate, all those. So I can see that if you were at a position, but please let me know if you're Phi Delta Chi to make sure that I get that to the home base. Okay, but it is $95 if you want to work with me. But I assure you that turnaround and the quality that you get. Ask somebody who's worked with me. I've worked with so many people. There's probably someone, one or two people at your school that have worked with me, and my track record kind of speaks for itself in terms of success. I've had one student I've worked with has, I believe, 15 interviews, and another one had a perfect. What I mean by perfect is that all of the places they applied for provided them with a residency interview invitation. So while I can't guarantee that you will get the residency position, I can guarantee that it will be the best that you can possibly do given the amount of time, and it will be a very high quality letter. But that is my specialty. I can look at CVs and things like that for an additional charge, but I'd really recommend that you use me for the letter of intent. I'm good at grammar and syntax with CVs and seeing what needs to be where, but in terms of formatting, that's just not my thing. And then if you do get an interview, I do have an interview course, which is residency.teachable.com/P/interview. And that in 3 hours will explain the point system to you. So if you did have interviews and you're like, why didn't I match? I can do one of two things. For the $95, you get the course and then up to 6 months of email support from me. So if you have questions like, this is my thank you email, is this grammatically correct? And I'll say, okay, well, no, it's not. Here's what it should be, and then I'll help fix it for you. Or I'm trying to rank these. Can you help me with the rankings? Yeah, sure, I can do that for you. And then as far as if you really, really want me to do this, and I only do this for a couple of people, for $295, I will listen to up to an hour of your interview that you have had, or a half hour of interview questions that you will answer, and I will provide my feedback on what happened. Why didn't you match with the answers that you had? But again, that $300, that's kind of a premium service. I only do it with a dozen people. So that's kind of something that, if you really want it, I'll do it. But I do enjoy it. But again, I know that's a lot of money for someone that just spent a couple $100,000. But again, the payoff is, of course, hopefully getting the residency in phase 2. But sometimes the easiest thing to do is just email me, TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com. Sometimes it might just be easiest to just contact me with a question that you have, and I'll let you know if I can or can't help you. I apologize if you're emailing me during that busy time. Obviously, hey, could you take a look at this just real quick? I'm going to prioritize those that have already kind of enrolled in the course and that have sent me their letter of intent and CV, and I'll try to do my best to help you. But the volume is immense. during that weekend. And I've cleared my schedule for that. I've done a lot of things to clear that time to make sure that I can honor that promise of returning a high quality letter to you within 24 to 48 hours. But if you have a question, now is the better time to ask me at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com.